So guys, who has turned off notification already? How did you find this advice? Do you feel yourself calmer or something opposite? I have turned them off and seem to be more productive. Yeah, it's very easy to lose your focus when you're actually losing focus on those notifications. I will tell you about this a little bit more because it is a very simple topic and typically people afraid to do something with this, just to turn them off. It's very simple, very straightforward. It's so simple, so not too much people believe that it might work. Such simple advices shouldn't work, they think. Yeah, and as Eduardo wrote, on one hand I feel calm, but from another side a little bit anxious. Yes, I understand. It is maybe logical consequence, a little bit of anxiety. This anxiety comes from, I don't know if you're familiar with this, it is a kind of addiction, because actually a lot of us are really addicted to getting new information from outside world. And this addiction has nature very close to actual drug addiction or cigarette addiction or something like this. And if you have an experience with cigarette addiction, you might feel something similar, some similar feeling that make a smoker urge for a cigarette. Approximately the same happens when we start to want to check our emails. It's very close because mechanics are very the same. And actually, in case of email notifications or some other notifications, we are not addicted to some drug which is external to our body, but we are addicted to some chemistry that works from our brain. And scientists call this chemical dopamine. It's neuromediator, some magic stuff that our brain inject into itself to make us feel a little bit pleasant. So we have dopamine injections exactly in the same ways as in exactly the same moments when we check our emails or we have some cocaine. I do not have my personal experience with cocaine, but I have read a lot of publications about this. So anxiety, it is normal and it should go away maybe in a couple of days. Just it will be less anxiety, and finally it's going to disappear in exactly the same way as people quit smoking. So
Chris, hey Max, so why don't we kick off?
Yeah, I think we should start.
Yeah, we've got most of the folks on. If there's anybody else straggling in, they'll join late. So everybody, this is obviously session 5 of your personal effectiveness training. Obviously, we've got Maxime here. I just wanted to remind you all on the call that this is our last formal session, but I just wanted to remind you all that we do have 2 follow-up sessions in December 7 and December 14. The webinar invites are already out on your Outlook calendar. But I just wanted to make sure that you all kind of remember that we'll have a little bit of a follow-up in those 2 sessions just to see how things are going and so forth. So with that said, I'll turn it over to Max. Everybody have a great day, okay? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Let us go ahead. As usual, before we start to talking about something new, I would like to have some point to remind about a green task, because from feedback form, I notice that it is not quite clear which tasks are green and which one are red one. Here I would like to cite, if you know Lewis Carroll, I'm pretty sure you know, some excerpt from Alice in Wonderland. Maybe you remember that Queen told that to Alice. She told, "My dear, here we must run as fast as we can just to stay in place. And if you wish to go anywhere, you must run twice as fast as that." So, in other words, I think this excerpt can help you to understand which tasks are red and which one are green. We consider tasks to be red those tasks that help us to just stay in the same place. But those tasks that help us to move forward, those tasks that make us closer to our goals or to what we want, we consider to be green tasks. So here is the main difference. Actually, there are some amount of tasks that may be at the same time both red and green, but it happens very rarely. More often we have pure red tasks that help us just to stay at the same place. It doesn't matter how cool, how efficient we do these tasks. Anyway, as soon as they completed, we do not become closer to our goals. We just do not stay. We just stay on the same place. We do not become farther from our goals. But green tasks make us closer. So that is the main point. That is the main difference between red and green tasks. So let us go there again. Today we are going to talk about procrastination, some points of procrastination, but also speaking about procrastination, I decided to talk about it a little bit later. And now I want to make an emphasis on a very important moment. You might remember that our life, or efficient life, should be built around this cycle of getting information, reflection, and action, behavior. It came from Buddhist approach to education, and also we should, or it helps us to be efficient if our day is organized in this cycle. So we have separate phases for getting information, for example, from emails, from phone calls, from chats, from whatever, and we have separate and unambiguous phase of reflection when we just think and decide what should we do. And as one of outcomes of the reflection is task list, monkeyfied task list that can go for an action. When we step aside, or our rational side just step aside, and the monkey start to act. So here is the cycle. And as soon as we have something in cycle, we can have quite natural question: where typically does the cycle begin? Or in other words, what is the first thing we do in the morning? For example, as soon as we get up, what first thing do we do? Is it getting information? Is it reflection? Is it action? What do you think? Can you write your case? What do you typically do? Guys, do you have problems with audio? Because Paola wrote she has some problems with audio. Is it on her side only, or I having problems? Pete says getting information. It means that Eduardo, me too, doesn't mean that you also get information, or you cannot hear me. So what should I fix? Because actually it is typical. The audio is cutting. So maybe what can I do about this? How bad it is, I wonder. It shouldn't be. Maybe I can spend 10 seconds just to take a look what can be fixed. Maybe it might help, maybe it might not. But anyway, if audio is not cutting yet, what do you think? What is the first thing you do at the morning? What do you typically do? Getting information means you start your working day from checking emails, from checking whatsoever, or is it something else? And if so, what else it can be? I hope now it became better. I just ended some processes on my computer, so maybe it should work better. Let me know if it doesn't. So, review and work emails, review calendar on my work phone. Beware of your work phone, because first thing you see on your screen of your phone is some notifications from different software. Unfortunately, email, social networks, and other stuff. So, what do I propose to you? Just to try some days, not every day, but just to try and see if it helps. To try start your day from reflection. What does it mean, start your day from reflection? It means that before checking email, before just even touching your phone, just spend 2, 3, 5 minutes to think what you are going to accomplish. Or first thing you can do before getting information might be an action. It means that before you start getting information from outside world, try to do anything from your task list. So try to behave this way. So first thing you do before checking emails starts doing or working on your tasks. So I mean, try to start your day from reflection or action instead of impulsive email check, because very often we check our emails impulsively and unconsciously, unfortunately. And it is just proposition, and let me explain why I suppose it might help you. And right here and right now I'm going to discuss a little bit and tell you about such a phenomenon as information overdose. When more information you get, the worse you become. And I'm going to start from description of two experiments, two very quite famous scientific experiments. And first of these experiments was that conducted by Brunner Potter in the mid of 60s. And this experiment was as follows. Guys had a lot of pictures of different level of distortion, pictures of some common objects, and they presented these pictures to different group of subjects. And they presented pictures from very distorted level, very high level of distortion, and they started to present next picture which is distorted less and less and less and less, and they try to figure out on what level of distortion typical subject will recognize the original object. So they say, I think it is small chicken, or it is a fire hydrant. And also they were trying to understand whether or not it depends on how many information they give to subject mind. So how does it look like? For first group of subject, they gave a lot of information, so they gave a lot of distorted images with a very small step of distortion. So they very merely distort image from this spot to something more or less clear. And they noticed that, for example, I have prepared these pictures by myself, because in scientific journals in middle 60s there were no pictures at all. So I made them by myself according to description in this article. So for the first group, which had a lot of information, so a lot of images, they noticed, for example, that they recognize image somewhere there. But for another group of subjects, they gave them less information. Less information means they gave them the same pictures, but with a higher step of distortion. So they showed this image, this image, this image, and this. And they wondered if this group will recognize original object earlier or later. And surprisingly, they start to recognize the object later or earlier, on higher level of distortion, on higher level of noise introduced to the image itself. So this experiment was a little bit discussed in Nassim Taleb's book, in his, as far as I remember, Black Swan book. And his assumption is that as soon as our brain gets more information, it starts to create more false assumptions about what this object might be. And since it has huge number of different assumptions, it needs more information to prove some of them wrong. So that is why the more information we have, in some cases, the better decision we can make. And the first experiment, another experiment was conducted in 2000s, not quite recently from scientific point of view actually. And it is more or less also known experiment, and it is cited a lot in different business books, especially in marketing books. Experiment looked as follows. Also, there was a question of choice and how many information, how many choices subject have, and how it affects his or her behavior. And that experiment was as follows. In some stores, supermarket stores, from one day they have a table with gems, exotic gems. They sell just promotional sales of exotic gems. One day they had table with only 6 varieties of different gems, and other days they have more varieties. They had 24 varieties, and they do it. Repeat this experiment. So in even days they had a table with 6 varieties, and on odd days they had a table with 24 varieties. And they tried to see the difference, how many people were attracted to different tables, how many of them sampled something, how many samples were made, and how many purchases, how many gems purchased finally. So it is not surprisingly that a table with more varieties of different gems looked more attractive for visitors of that supermarket, and actually it attracted more, about 50% more. It doesn't affect the number of choice, doesn't affect samples, because in any case it was more or less the same, the number of samples, but it significantly affected number of purchases made. For example, here, when people have not too much choice, about 6 varieties, or exactly 6 varieties, I think even every third of attracted person purchased at least something, so 30% of purchased. And the last, in this situation, when people were presented to wider choice, they purchased it 10 times less. 10 times less. A significant and terrible result. And from a sales point of view, it was a little bit surprising, because it was widely assumed that the more choice a person have, the simple it is to make a decision, the more happier the person became. But actually it is not. The more choice, at least at this experiment set, a subject had, the less probability of purchasing decision was made. So what can we do, or how we could generalize these experiments about choice and easiness of choice, independence of information we have? There's also some aspect of information overdose, how it looks like. Consider we have some decision to make, and we are starting getting information about this decision. Since we have no idea about this decision, as soon as we start to learn and get at least some information, our confidence level in what decision should be made start to rise. The more information we have, the more confidence we have. And surely we would like to have a final decision on some expected level of confidence. Maybe this level typically is not enough. I would like to increase my confidence level. I would like to make a decision to do not blame myself later. So what should I do? In my previous experience, I got information and it increased my confidence level. So I need the confidence level to be increased a little bit more. Maybe I should get more information. Sounds logical and promising. So I start to do. But at the same point, at some point of information, after some amount of information got, my confidence level became descending. So it makes me worse. And I think in your personal life you are more or less familiar with this situation. It happens almost every time we have to make a decision. We have to make any decision about what to buy, or where to go for vacations, or even where to go out this evening, which smartphone to select or which hotel to book. It usually leads to a lot of struggle. But in spite of the fact that in our internet age we have a lot of information, we have a huge amount of information available to almost anyone. But getting information help for some little limit. After that limit, any new information make us worse. Let me show another example. It's a personal example. 2 weeks ago I was in London, and as you might guess, I hope you know that in London they have they drive on right hand side. So they have some strange cars. I mean strange that they have a steering wheel on the passenger side, and all of them drive wrong way, and it's a little bit confusing for guys from continent and from outside of Britain. But they pretend to help to guys like me. So in every road crossing, they wrote some hints. Can you see this hint? Look, an arrow. So because when I cross a street in Moscow, first time I should look on the left. But in Great Britain, I should first look on the right, because on this lane cars and buses goes that direction. So I should take a look on the right. And this hint would work perfectly, unless it is not real, because I a little bit photoshopped a real photo. Real one looked like this. They written the word look left, written upside down, but my brain can read upside down letters with no confuses at all. So when I'm going to cross the street and I'm deep thinking about something, I see letters that say me look left. I look left and see unpleasant surprise from the right. But someone might argue that we should not read letters that upside down letters. But to make things worse, here is original photos. Just for me, they have a look left written twice. And this arrow, just my eyes do not recognize this arrow, because it seems quite straightforward where I should look while I'm crossing the road. So that is original image. It has a lot of information. They have information in arrow that presents information and direction information where I should look like, where I should look. They have written it in words, and it started confusing, because this version more or less clear and doesn't confuse me too much, especially in this case because this arrow is hidden by a brick and this one is not. It is clearly seen, and this arrow will be seen when I go here on this part of the road. So right now, keeping information less, it is quite simple and quite straightforward to understand where to look to be safe. Unfortunately, they add more information. So that is how information overdose look like. And in many cases, I don't know from where this picture had been taken, but it's a very old one and very smart, I guess, that we are drawing in information, especially in information age, while we need something else. We need wisdom. We need wisdom, but we are able to receive only information. And information becomes wisdom when it is reflected. Sometimes it is reflection helps information to become wisdom. So that is why I propose you, just to try to see if it helps, if it makes better, to start your day not from checking emails, but from reflection or action. Some might argue that they check emails in the morning because a lot of things, a lot of urgent and important things might change overnight. But the Jedi wisdom is that important tasks rarely change overnight. They rarely do, actually. And just to check or prove me wrong, is it your case? So, what do I mean the case? Do you also feel an urge to check emails in the morning since something important might happen overnight? Might have happened. It is the first point, but at the same point, you have at least 3 tasks on your task list which are very important and they have not been changed for at least 3 months. So they are still waiting for you and still waiting for your attention. And can you let me know if it's your case? Do you also do you have the feeling that something important might have happened overnight and that is why you should check email, but at the same time you have at least 3 important tasks that residing on your task list without any action had been made, at least for 3 months, just as a short demonstration? I would agree with both of those, said Pete. Because if you remember what we were talking about during our first webinar, we have 2 thinking systems. One of those is very fast one, but it is error prone, it is not so smart. And another one is smart, but it consumes mind fuel. And sometimes we have no mind fuel to feed this smart thinking system, so we became very impulsive and very stupid, like monkeys. So that is why sometimes we fall in this fallacy and start checking emails from the morning, because our smart system is not started up and we are monkeys. And this process of checking emails may lead, and typically it does, it lead to information overdose and also to waste of mind fuel and turning off not started up smart thinking system. So that is why I'm supposing that starting your day from something else, something other than checking emails, might make you better off. And also I should say one more thing about email notification with another analogy. It is a photo from Asian buffet. Do you know this buffet? Some restaurants with eat all you can for some reasonable amount of money. So it is shabushi. Maybe it named somewhere somehow else, and I'm sure that you have some systems like this in US. It's a buffet, but you are not supposed to go and take some piece of food for you, but you are sitting right to this travelator for food, and food moves by itself in front of you. So I hope most of you tend to agree that in this case overeating is much more probable. When you have to stand up, go somewhere before having another helping, it makes a probability less, because it requires some effort, and typically we are lazy to do something like this. But in this case, you have to do nothing than just pull your arm and take a piece of food. So that is why it's quite easy to be distracted by this strange stuff like email notifications, because when we have to do something, or we need to take any action to get new information, it reduces amount of information consumed. So, but as soon as we have this notification that says, come on, we have something new, take a look at this, or it implies, or it says that you need to spend only 20 seconds to have some small dosage of dopamine, typically it's very hard to resist. It's very hard to resist. And especially when you think that processing of this email might take you only 20 seconds. Because focusing and thinking about seconds or about time also is not the proper way of thinking, because we do not lack of time. We lack of mindful, of that resource that make us mindful. Mindfulness, maybe a new word can be invented. And actually it loudly says that it needs only 20 seconds to be processed, but at the same time it supposes that it is going to ruin all your workday and make you feel miserable by the end of it. So that is why I think right now you are more or less confessed to turn them off, to reduce information overdose, information over consumption. We do not need such amount of information that we typically consume. At least that extra amount of information doesn't help us to make good decisions. Actually, in most of cases, it makes us worse. And to make it sure, just try it. Just try and see what your experience is. Information overdose is very frequent reason of procrastination. And since we are going to talk a little bit about procrastination, let me start of speaking about this, speaking about information procrastination, about procrastination, with a very simple example of procrastination. One time I had a training with some group, and also when I conduct in-person training, with live training with humans sitting in the same room, I have an ability to force all of attendees to perform exercises, and also I'm able to take a look at their preliminary results. And in one group there was a lady with a task in her task list which says vaccinate the cat. So she has a cat, and cat should be vaccinated. And also she assigned this task to vaccinate the cat, her cat, for later. Do you remember, I hope you remember, our talk about urgency zones, that we have tasks for today, tasks for this week, and tasks for later. This example of urgency zones. So she decided that she should vaccinate her cat later. And first thing I have asked her was, why did you put this task for later? She said, it was very first reply. It was obviously coming from system 1, from our fast thinking. She replied, because I have no time earlier. It is typical reply for cases like this when we assign some tasks for later phases. So she replied, I have no time to do it earlier. So perfect. But another question came to my mind. Are you going to vaccinate the cat by yourself? So I just imagine that you took this terrible medicine device, take usual live animal and just vaccinate it. Are you going to do it by yourself? So she replied, no, of course not. I'm not going to vaccinate it by myself, but I need to call a vet to make an appointment. And then I noticed she started to think, and it's her thinking was lead to some aha moment, and she said, but I can call a vet to make an appointment even today. So what has happened? It is quite typical situation of procrastination when we have no time to vaccinate my cat this week or especially today, but to make first step which make us closer to having vaccinated cat, we can make even right now or at least today. That is a very nice example of procrastination gap. It happens every time when we write one thing in our task list, but at the same time we are supposed to do completely different stuff at the beginning. So here is an example when we have written down something, vaccinate the cat, but actually we have not to vaccinate the cat, but we have to call a vet to make an appointment. And as soon as we reduced this procrastination gap, everything became more or less clear. And the task moved from later phases to today. So, what I would like to propose you right now. Let us make a small pause for, I guess, 3 minutes. And I would like to let you have a look on your task list and try to apply a magic fairy criterion to any task. What does it mean, a magic fairy criterion? If you also have some urgency zones, or you have times, or at least you have an order on your task list which assumes an order of execution, take a look at the very bottom or at very later stages. Take a look at those tasks and ask yourself, if a magic fairy get this task done right here and right now immediately, would it be a good thing to be done? Because there are two different answers. For example, it might be not very good idea to do this task right now. For example, here in Russia, typically if someone drives a car, we are supposed to change tires. We have summer tires and we have winter tires. And right now we are supposed to change our summer tires for winter. And also, most of people in this case might create a task to change winter tires for summer and assign this task for very, very later stages, for say end of April or middle of April. And it is pretty clear that if Magic Fairy came and changed my tires back to summer ones, I wouldn't be happy at all. But if it vaccinated cat, it might be good. Because, yes, personally, I have no time to make it earlier, but if Fairy gets it done, it would be nice. So, take a look at your task list and start going from bottom to top, from latest tasks, from those that you postpone for later, and start to ask yourself, if this task by any magical reason is done right here and right now, is it good? If it is, start to think, can you paraphrase it somehow? Paraphrase to reduce procrastination gap. Let me create small pause for 3 minutes to let you do this exercise. And please write me in question pane something like done, and it would be nice to hear an example from you. How task looked at the beginning and how it looks at the end, if it helps to you. So let us go. Let us spend right here and right now 3 minutes. Let us go. how is it going, guys? Do you have any examples to share? Examples of paraphrasing? Examples of something that sounds like that story about cat vaccination? By the way, do you have a task list in front of you? And how many of you and who does use a paper task list or electronic one? Paper, excellent. So let me guess, not too much of you had something that should be paraphrased. So you might just write me, done, or I have no such tasks earlier. And Pete, it's good for you. Yeah, it's get oil change in your car, finally. Let me guess, it was huge procrastination. It's terrible. And maybe even in some list it was written car in many signs. Cool. Okay, guys. For the next piece of webinar, I have a small choice. It depends on what actually do you have right now, because I might talk a little bit about procrastination itself, or I would like to, I have an option to tell you how to deal with complex project. I mean complex where it is not quite clear what the next step might be. Can you let me know, just write down, do you have any very complex project that you have no idea where to start and how to think about them? Or maybe do you have any project that more or less clear, but you did nothing about them for at least half a year? What do you think? Kevin said that nothing like that for him. Nice. Because actually, if we do everything correct, everything from first steps, if we have monkeyfied task list, if we regularly review our project list, task list on regular basis, we get to the zero of our inboxes. So in this case, we rarely face to procrastination or something complex, actually. But in most cases, if we have something unclear, procrastination might occur, but not perfectly. I have a couple of projects that are relatively clear but have been put off for a long time. Does anyone have any project like this? Also, they might be more or less clear, but no, I have no time for this. But at the same time, this project might be important. For example, typical procrastinations are somehow related with housing, so repair something, get something repaired in the house, with personal health, visit dentist or join a gym, for example. But in some cases, and with self-perfection, self-improvement also, it's quite common procrastination. Yes, they require a lot of mind fuel, which I have never seemed to have available. Good example. let me at least give you a hint how to deal with these projects. It's more or less quite straightforward, but require a lot of mind fuel. In this case, we have, if you remember, a strategy called rational flaneur from second webinar. It is a strategy illustrated like this. When we have some complex project, initially I told you that we have magic fairy method, which quite simple. We just imagine the vision of the outcome, successful outcome, what we would like to have as a result of this project, and then imagine that a fairy came and promised to give us 20 minutes to do at least something right here and right now. And we start to think about this step, what it might be. But there might be a project which is not too straightforward to understand the first step, or it is quite clear what the first step is, but it is very hard, it requires a lot of mind fuel, so we need to use some high or heavy artillery, intellectual artillery for dealing with projects like this. What does it mean? I can show you in some cases from sides of some points that we should clearly and formally define the vision. I will show some tools and hints, then to brainstorm, define what we call minimally acceptable result, and it is quite powerful concept of minimal acceptable results. And then after having minimal acceptable result, it might help us to think of the first step. So if it is not too straightforward to get the first step, or the first step is not very fast or procrastinated for a long time, try to go here and think not about the project itself, but about the minimally acceptable result. If it doesn't help, or it is not quite clear how minimally acceptable result might look like, try to brainstorm. If you are not able to brainstorm, try to define vision. And briefly, I will describe all of these phases. These phases or tools, because any phase has its own tools, they may be used separately, or they may be used at the same time, all at once, or one by one. It depends on the project, so I will describe how it looks like, and you could decide either use something separately or use it all at once. How to define vision? First step. A lot of important things should be start from end in mind. So what should we have at the end of the project? To define vision, in some cases, it might be helpful to formally answer some specific questions. For example, what should I do? It is a kind of description of my own project. What should I do? I should change oil in my car, I should create implant, or just fix some parts of my body. Anyway, another important question comes next. For what? For what I'm supposed to do this, what I should do. So what benefits do I expect to have as a result? What benefits? Another part, what else should I do to have these benefits? Because in most cases, only this project is not enough, is not sufficient to have this result. And we have to do some other steps. So what these steps looks are. Also a very nice point, very important point to ask is that for whom do we need this result? Do we need this result by ourselves, or somebody else needed this result? If somebody needs us, how did we know this? Did he tell us by himself, or is it our best guess? If it is our guess, on what assumption this guess is based? Are we sure in these assumptions? How could we check these assumptions? These 4 questions are more or less important, but also we have 3 more questions to think about. One of them, what should I do, or what could happen if this project is not done, some negative branch. And so what, and the difference between these two questions, or what and so what, or what means what could happen, and so what, it means is it really bad? What could happen? This might happen, but is it really bad or not? Or it might be not dangerous at all. And the final, maybe in some cases most important question to ask is how else we could achieve the same result. How else we could achieve this? Is there any alternative way to do the same but with less effort or with less risk or with some other benefits? So for example, we can consider example of what should I do? For example, to join a gym. For what? For example, in my case, in my sense of values, in my point of view, it should lead to be slimmer, to be fit, to look more attractive. For whom do I need? For whom? It's a very intimate question, not too straightforward. Maybe for me, maybe for my wife, maybe for someone else. But what else do I need? What else do I need? Actually, joining the gym is not enough. I mean, if we consider joining the gym is a formal sign of paper and paying money and enroll to that program, what else do we need? We need to buy some stuff, maybe we might need this. We need to think about dieting because not too much weight loss happens without dieting. Actually, it's a crucial point in this, not the exercises itself, but dieting itself. But from other point, how else it can be achieved? How else I might be fit? For example, I might go to Asia for a vacation, for 1 month vacation. Why not? Or join some TV show, or join some program. Sometimes it happens, program of losing weight, marathon, or something else. So as soon as I start to think about this, I start to define more or less clear vision, and in some cases, even at this point, it became more or less clear what should I do next or what should I do not do next. Or maybe it might become clear that I do not need this at all. So it might help. Let me take a look at the guys. I cannot understand anything you are saying. Do you experiencing troubles with connection? It might be terribly. Let me. Audio is fine here. So it depends on internet connection mostly. So if it was bad for all of us, I could start thinking something on my side. But anyway, this session is recorded, and since it is recorded, I'm going to share maybe even this evening the recording. It is recorded on my side, so poor internet connection should not affect it. So the video should be clear. Okay, so it here audio is nice for Marybeth, but was bad, but it is not good right now. Eduardo, sorry, but okay, I hope it might be helpful for you to look the recording, because this session will be recorded and I will distribute this to you. So that is why was a quite short hint about defining vision. For example, it might be series of questions to think about. As soon as you define the vision, you can go to the brainstorming. And the most important point about brainstorming is that our brain works in such a way that at the very same time it might do only one thing: either generate new ideas, or evaluate existing ideas. It means that Either you generate something or you think how this generated something builds into your project, how it affects your project, how it affects your project. Either we can generate or evaluate, and due to unknown reason we tend to fall into judgment thinking. So it requires some experience to switch off your judgmental thinking, or part of your brain that responsible for judgmental thinking. But I have a small hint that may help you. This hint is delirium provoking list that I took from book of Richard Wiseman, the book called 59 Seconds That Change Everything, or Change Your Life. I don't remember exactly the name. I took this list and modified for our purposes. So I created based on his ideas this list. What does it mean, delirium? Delirium means some crazy assumptions, some crazy ideas. I can try to share this list with you. I have this link. I will send you this list to the chat, so you can take a look at this list even right now. So that is how this sorry, not delirium. That is how it works. It has some points, some funny points from our rational side. It says try to imagine, for example, how this project might be approached by Eric Cartman or Batman or superhero or complete idiot or something. Actually, that is not in Russian. That was error page, because first link is not correct. I just sent you another one, and that page, which is in Russian, actually it is error page 404, not found. I will open it on my site and I will show you this, and I will show you how this list can be used. It looks like this. It's opening on my side a little bit slower, I don't know why. Second link should be correct. And as you might see, it is okay. Go on Pure Machine, start it on download and try to open this file. Did you open this file on your side? How it works? I hope it is really in English. Go ahead. Sorry for a little delay. Didn't open it. I will click one more time. No, I'm going to show you anyway. It should be Word document. Looks like this. Paula got it already. Yes. So I think you have got the main idea that lies behind this provoking list. A lot of points just make no sense. It's pure delirium, or maybe you have some proper term in English for this. It makes absolutely no sense, but it is exactly what we need. It helps us to switch off our rational side and try to think about project with no non-judgmental thinking, finally. For example, we can consider the case of changing oil in our car. Here's the list. Here is what you're supposed to do. It has some ideas, some points, like how this project would be approached or solved by a complete idiot or Homer Simpson, or I hope you also love Eric Cartman as I do, because it is my hero. It can resolve, I guess, any project in quite enormous kind of ways. Or also, this list has some ideas. For example, try to invent 2 or 3 to be like analogies. Try to compare your project with some expeditions or with basketball games with a Cinderella and dwarves. Try to think this way. For first sight, these points might look funny, but them are truly serious. They try to switch off your judgmental thinking and turn on your some, maybe not conscious, but your creative mind, creative part of your mind. In some cases, it might help. Just try. I think 10 minutes and blank sheet of paper can help you a lot with this. Just find 10 minutes, try to print out this delirium-provoking list and put it in front of you, and start to draw something that goes from your mind. It might help. Finally, you can see something that can make you be closer to the first step. It might help, but it might not, because we do not have any sure way to success. We have only sure ways to failure, actually. So another point, another concept that may help you is minimally acceptable results, or in lean startup, in lean methodology, they call it minimally viable product. And the idea of minimally acceptable results lies or can be described by this picture. I don't know if it is, if you get the message itself. I call it Velociraptor. From logically thinking person, it is very weird what live people do. Live people, which are impulsive and irrational. By the way, can you get this idea? Do you remember or any cases when you behave this way, which looks strange for logically thinking creature? So why do people wait until the last minute to do something badly? Because it is quite natural. If you have some project assigned and you have done it badly at the very beginning, you finally have time to fix it, to make it better. But typically, as soon as we face some complex project, some terrible project, especially with a deadline, we tend to wait until last minute when we have absolutely no choice other than do it half-assed. So, and sometimes it happens due to very strange phenomena called delegate to future self. I found description of this phenomena in Tim Urban's blog post when he was describing his experience of being prepared for TED Talk about procrastination. So he explained how hard it was for him being procrastinator and preparing a talk about procrastination. And there was a very nice phenomenon called delegate to future self. How it looks like. Typically, a lot of person, but thank goodness not all of us, tend to think about ourselves in the future in exactly the same way as we think about different person. Or neurophysiologists find out that in some people, minds, brains, when we think about ourselves in the future, we use or we activate the same brain structure which typically are activated while we are thinking about different people. So myself in the future for present me is something some other people. What do we typically think about other people is that me present, self-present, I have a lot of tasks to do, I have a lot of things to do over time. I have absolutely no spare time to think about this project, but I need this project done in very good way, because I do not need it to redone. I hate rework, so it should be done very perfectly from very beginning. So what can I do? Since right now I'm not capable of doing it properly, but myself, my future self, in say 2 weeks from now, seems to be a very nice person, because I do not see any reason why he should have any huge amount of problems that present me have. Why he or she should have such kind of problems? I see no reason, yes, but I see a lot of reasons of overwork for me right now. So maybe future me will be a superhero, kind of superhero, with no urgent tasks, with plenty of plenty of free time, and if so, let he take care of this. And this decision to postpone any action, postpone any project in order to make it better, it is supported by everything, every character inside our head. Especially it is supported by cognitive bugs. They have a slogan that do not postpone, procrastinate right now, or really you do need this thing to be done in very straightforward and very perfect way. So we hate rework, so it should be perfect from very beginning, but right now I'm not able to do it perfectly because I have a lot of other stuff to do. But tomorrow I seem to have no urgent task. Let us think about this tomorrow. But when tomorrow comes, I see a lot of reason of not doing this thing tomorrow. I decided to postpone it for the day after tomorrow, and then it happens until the logical end, when we trying to postpone it for tomorrow, but we see that tomorrow never comes. Tomorrow should happen right now and right here. And let me present another piece of wisdom. In internet there are meme with a guy, and the guy who wrongly named Confucius, but it is not Confucius, but actually a lot of some Eastern-like wisdoms are accompanied with in internet memes. They are accompanied with this image of this guy, Morihei Ueshiba. Actually, it's not a Confucius, but anyway. Do you grasp the idea behind this wisdom? Because from my point of view, it is a very crucial point. It's maybe the idea of the whole procrastinatology. Main idea. What do you think about this? How do you understand this idea? That makes sense. My reaction to this thing is that I feel like I can't do something unless I'm going to do it perfectly. Yeah, unfortunately, perfectionism is a common reason for procrastination. Because, yeah, I should do it half-assed early. Yes, in this case, you would have a chance to make it better. Because why typically we do postpone something for later stages? Because we suppose that it is possible, at least in theory, it is possible to do it perfectly from the very beginning. But actually, in our real world, it is not possible. There is no way to do something perfectly from very beginning, unfortunately. And the only point, the only question is that when it will be done half-assed. At the very beginning, leaving us at least a chance to make it better, or at the very last moment when we have no such a chance. So it is a very crucial point. And here in Russia we have a joke about this, about perfection from very beginning. I hope you understand and grasp this idea. You see BMW's 5 Series, I know that's very good German cars, and here is evolution of these cars. And one should understand how many work has been done to make it perfect, to make it exactly in the same way as is. And here is Russian Lada. By the way, there are a lot of Ladas still up and running, and especially in Cuba, it's a very popular car, and it was produced with little or absolutely no changes for over 30 years. They stopped production only, as far as I remember, in 2015. 2012 is the age of this meme. Actually they stopped production in 2015 or 2014. So that is how perfection from very beginning might look like. So take a look at BMWs, it's evolution, and Lada, it's perfect from very beginning. I think you have seen at least one Lada somewhere in Cuba or in Europe. Maybe some of them are still running in, I'm not sure, in Brazil, maybe not, maybe in Mexico somewhere. In those countries that were friendly to ex-Soviet Union. There are a lot of old, very old Soviet cars in Cuba, actually, still up and running. That's how our perfection from very beginning looked like. We used to have it in Colombia. I think you were enjoying this car, Lada. As we say, if it doesn't leak oil from Lada, maybe there is no oil rest at all. It's the only reason it stopped leaking oil on the road. So that is why the concept of minimally acceptable result is quite important. And the major question that might help you to understand how minimally acceptable result might look like is as follows. If the deadline is the day after tomorrow, what would you do to either minimize negative outcomes or to maximize profit? What could you do if the deadline is day after tomorrow? Or if it is those type of tasks that or project that do not assume any deadlines, consider that you would like to get rid of this project day after tomorrow. To do not think about this no time, nowhere, never. What should you do? At least something. And as soon as you get this very, I should say, primitive idea, I'm pretty sure that in most cases you might feel a little bit better, because at this point you start to have some next point of improvement. You could easily understand how this could be achieved and what next should be improved. So minimally acceptable result, in most of cases, very useful concept, and it might help us in many cases. Also, as I already told, all these tools might be used separately or all at once. If the project is complex enough, you should start with vision, then brainstorm, then minimally acceptable result. But in some projects, it would be enough just to think about minimally acceptable result, understanding that nothing can be done perfect from very beginning, and trying to make it from very beginning most exactly will lead to half-assed result at the very last moment of time. And as soon as you have minimally acceptable result, it might help you to think about or to think of the first step, what you can delegate to your internal monkey. So just imagine a magic fairy come and asking you, what could you do if I give you right here and right now 20 minutes? What could you do? If it is hard to think from step, or it seems that the smallest possible step to take might take you at least half an hour or 3 hours or 5 hours, try to think one more. But in some cases it might be acceptable to accept 1 hour task, but actually in most of cases we can think something that can be done even in 5 minutes, 3 minutes. As soon as you understand this, write this down, delegate to monkey, try to do it and see what happens. So this heavy artillery of dealing with complex project helps a lot with procrastination, especially these questions: what for whom, what else do we think, do we have any alternatives, or try to think alternative ways of achieve the same goal by thinking, brainstorming, and trying to provoke delirium in your head. What would Cinderella do, or how complete idiot approach with this project? Or can you imagine a situation when you do something completely opposite but having a result even better than initially assumed? Try to think this way, it might help. So it might help in a lot of cases of procrastination. But if it not, we have a lot of other tools which we might discuss, for example, on our post-training calls. But our post-training calls, first of all, aimed to have a feedback from you. I would like to see your screens, so we would have an ability to share our screens among each other and have a small talk, small discussion. How do you work with your task list, project list? If you have a project list on a paper, it would be nice to have a photo and send me in advance. I will send you this reminder a little bit later and what I do expect from you. So let me summarize what we have learned today. First of all, first common reason of bad decision is information overdose. It's very counterintuitive that in most cases when we face with unclear situation, we try to get information, but we need wisdom. Information becomes wisdom after thinking. The more information we have, the harder thinking became, or the more food for thought we have, the more abyss our thinking is. So mind the cat and vaccination, because in most cases we have absolutely no time for vaccination, but we have an ability to call a vet to make an appointment right here and right now. So procrastination gap, huge procrastination gap, or situation when we have something written down on our task list when we are assumed to take another step, like in Pete's example with car. Most likely there was a task says car in many signs, some terrible signs, or urgency, and maybe this task also might be colored in red, assigned it high priority and so on. But as soon as this huge task, car, huge and dangerous, was paraphrased to something like Google what the nearest garage to my office, or call to mechanic and make an appointment for oil change, or go to spare part shops and buy that can of oil. As soon as you paraphrase this task, it immediately fixes the whole problem. And also the very very universal advice, or the only universal advice that we may have, is sounds like this: when in doubt, just think. That is why we are trying to save our mind fuel, our most precious resource. Our most precious resource is not time, it is mind fuel. We start to save it to have an ability to think in situations when we are in doubt. It means that if you have something unclear in front of you, try to define vision, try to use the template of question that was 20 minutes earlier, try to generate ideas. In most cases, delivering provoking list might help you to do this. Think of minimally acceptable result, because in many cases, cognitive bug of perfectionism, which actually a lot of college students which graduated with medals or special awards, they have with this award, they go in this single pack, this cognitive bug of perfectionism. By the way, do you supposed to have a medal when you graduate with outstanding results? In Russia, they give just a medal, real medal. And the box this medal is stored have a hidden place for that cognitive bug of perfectionism. It make you perfectionist for almost the rest of your life, or procrastinator in other words, because procrastinator and perfectionist very often are the same people, the same person. And try to delegate to your monkey the very first action. Try to keep separately your project list and task list. So I think it might help you to think when you are in doubt. So also we have some places for questions if you have any. Also, I would like to share this video for those who were experiencing internet connection troubles. I will share this both in Facebook and in our LinkedIn group. I hope all of you have joined the group. If not so, you can join it. And in any time you have any question, you can just post it there or in our closed Facebook group, and I will respond soon. So let me show you summary, and if you have any question, I'm ready to answer this, and I'm open for any discussion on this. Or you can just share impression of what was happened today. Maybe share the main takeaway that you had today. You know, I like South Park shows, and almost in every show, not Kyle, Stan goes in the center at the end of every show and says, "I have learned a lot today," and say something very smart, which typically 4th grade student is not supposed to say. It does also make this show funny. Do you have something like this to share, like Stan typically does?